So I was saying that I hope that you know what a stanza is by this point. I'm sure you do. But just notably, the first stanza deals with knowing what the caged bird feels and the reaction it must have to watching seasons change and watching things happen and not being able to be part of that world or that excitement, being contained and trapped, being limited, being oppressed, all of those sorts of things. And listen, as we talk about this, Dunbar is speaking to racial situations for sure. But guys, like every good piece of literature, this applies to anyone's life in a variety of ways. And so I want you to think about, how has this been the case in your life? Have you ever felt trapped or limited or oppressed? Have you ever felt as if the world's going on and you're somehow behind bars? Whether that's a literal prison or an emotional prison, any numbers of kind of psychological prisons. You know, when we looked at Charlotte Perkins Gilman, she certainly knows what a caged bird is and how it sings and you know what it does in the cage. And I can't wait for you to look at Lindsay Sterling's piece, because I mean, I see this just very reflective. The second stanza says, I know why the caged bird beats his wing till its blood is red on the cruel bars. Wow. It's doing self-damage. It's hurting itself. Honestly, this is a form of self-mutilation and abuse, self-abuse. And for he must fly back to his perch and cling when he fain would be, he'd rather be on a bough. He's discouraged and he doesn't know how to get out and is very frustrated. And so I want you not to just hear what I'm saying, but to look through these stanzas, look at what he's asserting, look line for line at the images that he is denoting as being characteristic of someone who is caged. And I think it's interesting that he titles this piece, the title doesn't contain the word caged, it contains the word sympathy, which kind of denotes what he would like for us, our response to be, or his own sympathy to people who feel caged, correct? I know why the caged bird sings, ah me, when his wing is bruised and his bosom sore. I like that. The wing is what enables you to fly. And this one, it says the wing is bruised. And the bosom is where your heart is, and it's sore. And guys, I really want you to think, I know that so many of you have experience in literature, and I don't want to overdo this here, but how many times have we been in situations, not only that we felt limited or trapped, but also that we felt heartbroken? The bosom was sore. The core of us hurt and was pained. And literally, that's how this can be taken. Not only is the bird trapped behind bars, but he's miserable. And the longer it lasts, the more miserable he becomes. But he says, why does it sing? Well, we find out. It's not to deny what's going on, to pretend everything's great. He says here, it is not a carol of joy or glee. It's not a pretty song to be pretty and get your mind off of it, right? He says, but a prayer. That's what the song is. A prayer that he sends from his heart's deep core. A plea that upward to heaven he flings. So in other words, the singing that the caged bird does, in Dunbar's opinion, in this peace and sympathy, is a prayer from his heart to God's ear. It's not just a prayer, but also a plea to God to get him out of the situation. And I think it's a beautiful piece, and there's so much more to say here, but I don't want to steal what you might be thinking about as you read that piece in particular. Now, I would like to read with you Maya Angelou's piece, Caged Bird. And again, this is a voice coming along the same lines with the same kinds of ideas in 1983. And as you can read in the discussion board, I'm asking you to think about how this piece is similar and how it differs from Dunbar's piece. What do you see in this piece? What does Maya Angelou have to contribute to this idea of what it means to be caged? If you'll read along with me, go ahead and grab your poem. We'll begin. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays, and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on a distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. I love her, FYI. If you don't know me, if you haven't had me in Comp 1 or Intro to Lit or anything else, or know me personally, you will know. If you don't know me, know this. I love Maya Angelou. And I would strongly suggest, this is just a public service announcement from me to you. Get everything you can get your hands on of her. She is just an incredible individual. And she passed away a couple of years ago, but her words live on, thank God. And I mean that. That's not a swear. All right, so I want you to think about stanza for stanza, line for line, and her style is a little different. I like her flow. You know, it's more modern. It appeals to our ears. One thing about Maya Angelou that to me is very obvious is she was also a musician. She enjoyed music and she sang, and so a lot of what she says just flows off the rhythm. There's a rhythm to it. You could almost hear it. What she writes, you can almost hear it with a drum beat in the back and or music, like some kind of instrumental accompaniment with hers. So and that's, I'm just talking about in general with her poetry and her pieces, even her essays. I mean, they're very prosaic, so the way that they're written. But anyway, I want you to think about what she has to say. Now, she counters, as you can tell, the difference between a free bird and a caged bird. And I really want you to dig into that. I don't really want to give you too much information here because I want to see what you can do with this. I'd love for you to dig out phrases and lines from these pieces and kind of use them and see what do these pieces have in common? What kind of pictures? I always say with poetry, especially if you're out there and you haven't had me before, with poetry, the first thing I try to teach people is there a visual image? Is there something, a picture that you can paint to understand this better? What picture has she painted? You certainly can do this with this. You can do it with Dunbar's piece as well. What picture is being painted here? Who's there on the surface? And then go below. What does it mean? How do you know? What words did she use? What phrases did she use? How does the free bird feel? How does the caged bird feel? How do they feel things differently then? And instead of just saying, oh, well, they're different, you know, they feel this way. The caged bird feels trapped. Okay, when she says what? When she says what line, you know that the caged bird feels trapped, okay? So I want you to support what you say with phrases or lines of the poetry. And finally, I really look forward, as I said, to you getting into Lindsay Sterling's piece. And I don't want to give this away because I want to see what you have to say about her visual performance here in presentation, Song of the Caged Bird. I love this, and it goes along so well with what we're talking about. I look forward to hearing from you this week, especially with regard to this particular assignment. You guys have a great week. Enjoy President's Day, and I'll see you next time.